Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dan Lanning and the Oregon Ducks. They get it done at home against USC. How I would quantify this game, like both of these teams banged up heading in. Both of these teams got even more banged up as this game went along. I thought Oregon's depth showed a little bit. Dan Lanning has recruited better bodies to this Oregon program than Lincoln Riley and USC has over the last couple of years. I thought that showed, and that's normally what separates these teams in these late November games. What team's deeper? Like, what team's better along the lines of scrimmage? That answer was very, very obvious. It was the Oregon Ducks. And if you're USC, look, there's a reason why this game never got out of control. USC has some of the best players in the sport. And Jacoby Lane played an absolute game. Tanuk Hines played an absolute game. Like that is a very hard Oregon secondary to get things going in the passing attack. USC's wide receivers made some plays. You can't go on the road to Autzen Stadium, lose the turnover battle, make multiple special team blunders, and expect to win. That was the story. A lot of really fun storylines and players and some game balls to give out as we get into this one. Before we do, and as always, USC fans, Oregon fans, let it fly. We said this during our preview on Sunday afternoon of last week. This game was special to the boys, right? There have not been many fan bases who have shown more love than the Oregon and USC fans. We were extremely excited to break this one down after it happened. Let it fly in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, I want to start you off with this. And I would love to hear people answer this question in the comment section too. If I were to ask, what's the reason Oregon figured this one out? What's the reason Oregon came out on top? What would your answer be?
I mean, you probably just look at the rushing numbers, like to triple up USC in the rushing numbers. And again, I think that's kind of enigmatic of what you kind of said. Like Oregon probably has built a stronger top to bottom team over the past couple of years compared to USC, who again, you said it, like why USC hypothetically could have always been dangerous, not just in this game, but in any game they play. They have elite players, and especially that quarterback wide receiver battery. Honestly, I thought Jaden played really well. Along with those wide receivers, again, you said it, kept them in a game where I'd say Oregon was dominating basically every other facet.
I don't know. See, that might be fair, right? Because Oregon was winning the battle along the lines of scrimmage. One of the bigger storylines we had heading into this one was, could USC's front seven deal with this Oregon rushing attack? More importantly than that, could they find ways to get Oregon off schedule? Oregon was 7 of 11 on third downs because they were never behind schedule. It was a lot of 3rd and 1s. It was a lot of 3rd and 2s. USC doesn't quite have the guys along that defensive line. And that is a nasty Oregon offensive line, even with some injuries. Isaiah World.
Depth, because that was to me like the biggest question probably by far coming into the season is Oregon's depth, maybe on the defensive line, but probably more especially on the offensive line. Like you were working some guys in there who, again, I don't think anyone exactly knew what you're going to get. I thought those guys played well.
Because you went into this game down Isaiah World, who's been awesome at left tackle. You didn't have Janoris Wilson to even start. Then Alex Harkey goes out for a couple of drives, and it's like, whoa, if you told me Oregon was down to their 4th and 5th offensive tackle late in November, I would be concerned. Really impressed with some of the depth that Oregon showed up front. And Dill, quite frankly, USC's been showing depth all year. USC's been battling injuries all year long. They have the right offensive line coach. That offensive line should be good for the next couple of years. It's hard to deal with the injuries USC had to deal with. I guess the second conversation here, and I want to dive more into the run game, because if I'm an Oregon fan, we've seen better box score numbers from the run game, right? Oregon had $179, 4.5 yards per carry. That's not jumping out the stat sheet at you. The bigger storyline for me, USC, 0 sacks, 2 TFLs. It was just really efficient, man. USC could not get them off schedule. It felt like Oregon had the whole playbook open on offense. Then you flip it to USC. USC couldn't run the football. 52 carries for, I believe, 1.8 yards per carry. Really, the best run scheme USC had working was probably Jaden keeping it on some design quarterback runs. What was the story there? And if you can't run the football and you go on the road to Autzen Stadium and you have to block up Mateo Yu and Tatum and Bear and Amari Washington, and then you go down your starting center, then you go down your starting left tackle, it's hard to win a football game. It felt like USC was relying on some of the best players in the sport. And some of the best players in the sport really stepped up.
It's almost impressive that they were able to hold that game kind of close, really up until the fourth quarter, where it started to get out of hand a little bit. Maybe you could say you've got 3 wide receivers, and Tanuk Hines, I think, is emerging in a way that if I'm a USC fan, I'm excited because you probably know you're losing the other 2 guys to the NFL draft. Tanuk Hines, I thought, stepped up, made some huge plays for USC, and again, they needed every one of them because again, Oregon was dominating.
I'll give Oregon credit because what I talked about is, hey, what's the big goal for Oregon is, hey, if you can take away Mekhi Lemon, you give yourself a really good shot to stop this USC passing attack. And I largely thought Oregon did a really good job taking away Mekhi Lemon. I thought Jaden Kennedy had a very, very solid football game for Oregon, right?
What I did not have on my game that honestly, like, I think ref-wise probably didn't exactly call the Oregon's way. And that's not to say like it was fair for both sides. Like USC had their share of maybe ticky-tack calls, but it was tight and they weren't letting these Oregon cornerbacks be as physical as maybe they've been able to be all game. And again, like USC credit, like those guys are hard to deal with. They're going to draw their penalties, but I thought Oregon in a game that was, again, probably not optimally called in terms of the style. Just
and we've brought that conversation up a couple of times this year. It's like, what happens when you get a group of refs that are a little bit more loose with that flag, throwing that flag? Because Brandon Finney and Iffy, they are big physical defensive backs that want to put hands on you. The refs were calling that a little bit, and there ain't no doubt about it. Big storyline for USC was Tanuk Hines. I don't want to overstate that because one of the stories was like, all right, if you take away Mekhi Lemon, Jacoby Lane was really, really good today. But then it's like, do you have that third answer? Tanuk Hines was him, man. And it's not only the verticality. What really impresses me about Tanuk Hines real quick, this dude can get open. He can make contested catches. He came out of high school as this track and field star from the state of Texas. I didn't know there was much more to his football game. Tanuk Hines has been awesome for USC as USC looks to be like, hey, what's our wide receiver room going to look like in 2026? Or replacing Jacoby Lane, replacing Mekhi Lemon. You got a guy that's going to help you a lot in 2026. Oregon on defense, really good up front, I thought. And again, I thought Mateo is starting to – this is important, Dill. Like when you get late in November and you roll into the college football playoffs, the biggest conversations are your best players impacting the football game. This is back-to-back weeks where I thought Mateo's presence was really, really felt, not only in the run game, but getting after the passer as well. USC was in a tough spot on the road, having to throw the football as many times as they had to. And Oregon took advantage there.
And it was the interior guys too. Like I thought they were doing a really good job getting after it. And again, Jaden's tough. He's tough to get sacks on. He's been really elusive. And honestly, he played a pretty composed game for the amount of pressure he was under. But yeah, you saw like when you sap the run game, it's just really hard to protect. And Oregon, you certainly took advantage. I thought.
It's like when you just don't have a run game to lean on, and everybody knows the only thing you can do to move the football is drop back and throw. It's hard against really good defenses, especially when you're talking about an Oregon secondary that's been the best in the country up until this point. How would you evaluate the quarterbacks? Because I think there are going to be some people that are like, Jaden was loose with the football, had 2 interceptions in this game. He had to. USC was not running the football. It became very apparent early in this football game. If USC was going to score, they had to do it through the air. And look, it ain't going to come easy against Oregon. Oregon's really sticky in the back end. I'm okay with Jaden's 2 interceptions because he also made some high-level throws into some tight windows and let his players go make plays. And here's the other thing, man. Dante Moore, like first watch, I was like not the cleanest game from Dante Moore. And then you look up at the stat sheet, 22 of 30, 2 touchdowns a pick. Like, not a bad performance in a big moment from Dante Moore, quarterback, either knowing damn well there's probably some better football that's in the chamber for Dante Moore going forward.
Well, I don't know. When I evaluate Dante Moore, I almost felt the complete opposite. I thought that was a really strong game from him. I thought he made some big time throws. Like that throw to Kenyon Sadiq up the seam. Like that's
Oh
a huge, a
yeah.
really huge moment, a
Yep.
really big play. Like they got to make it. I thought he had some drops that probably weren't ideal. Like that.
Yep.
Some of those timing balls to the boundary were like things that I almost want them to get to more. Like it feels like something. His arm is so good. I feel like his anticipation's getting better with various wide
He
receivers,
threw
especially
some
with
good
Corey
balls.
Moore being down. That's like a play. I felt like they got like Malik had one. I know McClellan dropped one, but like those type of throws, if that can be a big part of what Oregon's doing, I think they're just really hard to deal with, especially as Kenyon Sadiq really starts to dominate the middle.
That's what made it really tough for USC, because you felt like USC heading into this game, they just don't have the guys yet to stop Oregon with a 6-man box. If you play with 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers and you leave your 2 safeties high, Oregon was going to run all over you, right? So USC leaned into some 3 linebacker sets, and they were walking their safeties into the box, and their cornerbacks were on islands. And USC, I just don't think USC has the cornerbacks yet to deal with these wide receivers on the outside, right?
And
Like
that's why
Marcellus
Oregon's
Williams.
really tough to deal with. Like you need
Yeah.
to be a super complete defense. You need to have
Yeah.
cornerbacks who can deal with one-on-one guys
Yep.
on the boundary you can play. You obviously need to be really tough in the middle. And you said it, like USC certainly has holes. Like their boundary corners probably aren't where they need to be exactly.
Yeah.
Some of their ability to play on the interior against really heavy teams like in Illinois, like a Oregon, sorry, like that type of style, that's proven to be a bit of a challenge for USC. And again, Oregon can hurt you any which way. It's just that's what makes them unique animal on offense.
What's your stock report here? Like, give me your takes on both of these programs moving forward. For USC, maybe more 3-year window. For Oregon, going into the college football playoffs, or ideally going into postseason play.
Well, Oregon feels like, again, I don't know that a ton has changed. Like they still feel very well capable of winning a national championship. If they get this from Dante Moore, to me, they're just really hard to like handle. Because I thought, again, I looked at this game. I don't know, maybe the stats aren't jumping off the page to you. I thought this was a big time game from him. I thought when he needed to make big time throws, he mostly made big time throws.
Yeah.
Didn't take any sacks. Really kind of kept the mistakes pretty limited. Like they get that from him, and then their defense to me, like that front seven, and especially Bryce Betcher, he's starting to come on in a way that I'd be really encouraged. Like this Oregon team,
With regards to Oregon, you're seeing that multi-dimensionality to them. Like USC, their pathway to winning was really only in a shootout, right? Like they weren't going to win a defensive slugfest because USC's not there on defense. For Oregon, this game started out shootout fashion, man, right? Like it started out where it looked like it was going to be a track race. Well, Oregon matched USC. And then as the game went on, and maybe it was, look, Lincoln Riley came out with some really, really good calls in the first quarter, first half of this game. As the game settled in, Oregon started running the football, controlling the time possession more, leaning on their defense. That's kind of how they took over that football game in the second half. Oregon can win in a lot of different ways, man. That to me is what makes them dangerous. And then it's, all right, well, what happens when, and look, Poncho looked okay on the sideline. Poncho was chirping. Poncho was celebrating with the boys. I think Poncho will be back at some point in the season. Harkey, Isaiah World. Harkey came back, right? So, and then Isaiah World will play. You could tell, I think he tried to give it a go for a drive or two and then didn't play much else. What happens when you get your offensive line back, right? And then DeCorian Moore, potentially Evan Stewart. There's another gear, man, that you think Oregon can reach. And for USC, it's just, hey, you saw a program that over the last 3 years has just beat you on the recruiting trail, right? Oregon has recruited specifically the line of scrimmage at a better level than USC. USC's catching up. USC has their blank together. I'm a Michigan fan. I'm a Big Ten guy. I'm a Michigan fan. I'm nervous about both of these West Coast teams because both of these teams are going to be contenders in the Big Ten for the next 5 to 10 years if things kind of continue where they're going. It's just you saw USC pay the consequences for not recruiting the lines of scrimmage. Dan Lanning got to Oregondale and recruited like Kirby Smart recruited at Georgia. Took Kirby Smart's blueprint, implemented out there in Eugene. We're going to be big and physical along the lines of scrimmage, stop the run, get after the passer, run the football. That's what won Oregon this game. USC's not there yet, but that's what it takes to compete at the highest level of the Big Ten. as USC gets these guys coming into the program that are now looking like Oregon. Because that's one of the things you can say. And I'm sorry I'm rambling a little bit. Like Oregon just body type wise, bigger and stronger up front. USC needs more of those bodies. And as they get more of those bodies and as they get some of these young cats developed, because you make no mistake about it, like G-Day, Jakeem Stewart, Floyd Picard, that's how USC catches up, but they're not there yet. Rome wasn't built in one day. Dan Lanning's been building for 3 years. USC hasn't been building that long. And so Oregon's farther along. We'll see if USC can close the gap. Team fights, though, right? We've seen USC fight plenty. And Lincoln Riley's starting to show a little bit of more emotion on the sideline, which I like. We'll see how it looks in the next 3 years. But both programs, I should say, are going in the right direction. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.